My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Bob Brooks, who has been a sports commentator in the Cedar Rapids area for many years.
How you doing, everybody?
Bob, tell us, when and where were you born?
Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at St. Luke's Hospital.
What?
1926, December 12th.
What was your parents' names?
You want my mother's maiden name?
Very nice. Mm-hmm.
Well, her name was Jane Craig, and of course my father's name was Ira Brooks.
What was your dad's occupation?
Well, he started out as in the lumber business in Wayland, Iowa. Moved to Cedar Rapids, and he worked for Wisconsin Lumber Company when he came here, and then went to work for King's Concrete Company, became a vice president, and was with them until the day that he died. And he incidentally had a heart attack out on the 16th hole at Elmcrest Golf Course in November when I was doing an Iowa-Ohio State game in Columbus. He walked up the 16th fairway, and that was it.
What a nice way to go.
Yes.
Where'd you go to grade school?
I went to Arthur Grade School.
Was there, I have a note here, other family members?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, yes. Well, let me go through the litany here. My wife's mother went to Arthur, and I went to Arthur. My wife went to Arthur. My son and daughter went to Arthur, and I have one grandson who's going to Arthur and one other grandson who will be there shortly.
When you were growing up, what was your home address here in Cedar Rapids?
Well, we moved around a little bit since my dad was in the building business, so we had several addresses, but 2731 First Avenue Southeast would be an early residence.
You would build a home and then sell it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for a period of time, we lived with my aunt and uncle, who my mother's sister, Jessie Craig, married Otto Ogden, and he had Ogden Lumber Company, and so during the Depression for a period of time, we lived with them. But we had homes at 2111 Blake, and we had a home on 26th Street, and one on Beaver, and
you lived just about
same neighborhood, but just different.
Mm-hmm. When you were growing up, Bob, did you have a lot of fond childhood memories? What did you do to keep yourself occupied?
Well, I suppose all the kids' stuff. Yeah.
Did you ice skate?
Oh yes, my dad was an ice skater, and we went out to Ellis Park a lot to skate, and then Arthur School had a rink, and we would skate there too. Yes, had some ice skating. My dad and my uncle, they went on some fishing excursions that I went with them when I was young. They tried me out, I think, on pets. I think one Easter they gave me a rabbit to test if I would take care of pets. Well, that was the last pet.
Was you into the silver skates competition?
Oh, no, I didn't compete. No, I wasn't that good. I had terrible ankles, had weak ankles. And,
How about the 4th of July when you was a kid? Was that a
well,
fun
we
time?
shot off fireworks. Oh, yeah. Yes, we went usually bought them at Greenberg's drugstore that was just about on the corner of 27th, First Avenue and 27th Street, kind of catty corner from where we lived. And I presume I spent, I know I can remember I was always spending more for fireworks than I was allowed to spend, of course.
How about family vacations? Did your family have a tradition of taking vacations every year?
Did later on, yes, after, when towards the end of the Depression, the late 1930s, we had some trips. In 1939, went to the New York World's Fair, and saw a lot of things with regard to that.
How about Golden Gloves? Do you remember Golden Gloves?
Oh, yeah. Well, I wasn't a participant, but I was in on that sort of thing. Yeah, when I went to work with the Gazette.
Were you into sports as a child?
Yes. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Because of my folks, especially the Cedar Rapids Raiders baseball team. They took me to most every game. We rarely missed a game. It was sort of a family ritual that my mother went, my dad went, I went, my aunt and uncle went. And we had, it was a usual thing to do that, yeah.
Was this at the old ballpark?
At Hill Park, out below Roosevelt Middle School, yeah.
Did your dad have a car then? Did you?
Yes, had a running board, I know that.
Did they have concession stands out there?
Oh, yes. Alex Fiddler was the concessionaire. He was well known in those days in Cedar Rapids for, he was involved in, as a boxing referee, worked the Golden Gloves, was street circulation manager for the Gazette, and ran the concessions at Hill Park, ran the concessions at Iowa football and basketball, and he was one of the best known men in town. Yeah.
Hunter Airport. Did you ever have occasion to go out to the?
Oh yeah, the old Hunter.
The old
Hunter Airport. Yes. Knew later on, got to know Jim Wathen very well, and he was around the airport at that time. And
didn't Jim have a son that was?
He had John Wathen, was his son, who became a very well-known Major League Baseball player and manager, and for a time was the manager of the Kansas City Royals.
But were your folks Hawkeye fans?
Oh yes, heavy Hawkeye fans. My dad had season tickets. He must have started, I suppose, a season ticket maybe in 1938. But we had him, certainly, the family had 2 season tickets in 39.
That was prior to Kinnick Stadium.
No, Kinnick Stadium was there then. But my dad had been, I know, to the old Iowa Stadium, which was down where the Iowa Library is, down on the banks of the Iowa River. Yeah.
Did he ever talk about? Did they have large crowds early on when?
No, at the old field where they didn't have. I don't think they had 25,000 seats. It was a wooden sort of affair, and then when Kinnick opened, why the crowds were not very good. I presume they just had 2 sides of the field at Kinnick, and 25,000 would certainly have been a pretty good sized crowd for him.
You had mentioned the fact when they built Kinnick Stadium, they sold bonds to
Yes.
build this stadium.
Sold bonds, and going through the 1938 season, the bonds were worth zippo. And after the Kinnick year, 1 year, they were able to retire those bonds.
Did your folks take you down there as a child to?
I was in the knothole section. Yeah, a quarter got you in for the year, and you could stand or sit at the north end of the end zone. Had some temporary bleachers and a big Western Union clock with second hands on it. It kept the time, and in the corners, the northeast and northwest corners, they had shrubbery or sumac trees, and you could stand under a sumac tree and see the ball game.
Did you, when you would go to Iowa City with your folks, there wasn't any pavement back then? Were they gravel roads?
Oh no, there was pavement. There was some pavement, yeah. Old 218 was in operation, and the Krandic was running. You could take the Krandic rail car from Cedar Rapids to Iowa City and just basically get off at the stadium. Yeah.
Did that the Krandic, that had a name all of its own, didn't it?
Well, yeah, Cedar Rapids and Iowa City Railway.
But I mean nickname.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I rode that when I went to Iowa. I rode that about every day for a year and a half, I imagine. We called it the Vomit Comet because it rolled and rocked and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
When you went down to Kinnick Stadium as a young person, was this back in the days of Nile?
Oh, no, Kinnick, yes, the Iron Man, one of the famous football teams of all time.
Back then, how many games would they play in a season?
Well, they'd play about 8 games, yeah. They started practice the day after Labor Day, which is very comfortable, and the first game was around the 27th or 28th of September, and then they played till just before Thanksgiving.
You were talking or telling me about before they had bleachers, the crowds or the participants. Maybe this is back in your days, your dad's time, when the crowds would move back and forth.
Well, that was 1939. Really, is when I got into that, because Iowa was not drawing enough in those days to have any crowd control, because people could just move and sit wherever they wanted. So out of the knothole section, as soon as they kicked off, us knotholders jumped into the stands. And then when one team went to one end of the field, Iowa played Indiana in a very, this is overlooked in the history of the Kinnick year of 39, the fact that Iowa played a 3-point game with Indiana, high-scoring game, 32-29, and when a lot of offense in the game, and when Iowa went down to one end of the field, well, the crowd moved down there. So when they kicked off, Indiana started to move, well, the crowd went the other end of the field.
Did you get to see the Iowa-Notre Dame game when Notre
Yes,
Dame?
I did, yeah. That was the game probably that paid off the bonds for the Kinnick Stadium, because all of a sudden every seat was sold, and the knothole section was canceled, and the ticket, I believe, was $5. And as I told you, I was sitting around the table at home in the evening, trying to figure out how I was going to come up with $5 in 1939. Why, it was a major undertaking. And I finally told a gentleman that I would mow his yard the next year for $5, and there was one thing about it that I would do that, and so he would pay me in advance, and I got the $5, got in to see Iowa and Notre Dame, and what he didn't tell me was that his lawn was bent grass, and when you mow bent by hand, that, my friends, is a job.
Did they have the Heisman Trophy back then?
Yes, they did. Now Kennick won it, and Iowan, I think the Heisman started in 1935, I believe, and Jay Berwanger out of Dubuque was the first winner of the Heisman, and Niall Kennick won in 1939. Yeah, magnificent. It was a magical time, really.
What was your ambition in high school? What did you think you wanted to do when you got
Well,
out?
I thought I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I thought I wanted to be in sports, and nobody in our family had ever done anything like this, and I didn't think, well, I'm going to be a renegade or anything. It's just something I wanted to do, and I think probably the seed for all of that was put into me by my mother and father, and my relationship with the old park and all those ball games, and my dad's interest in sports, and my disinterest in construction or selling lumber or pouring concrete. Why I
Did your dad?
opted for that. I really decided, I guess you would have to say, looking back, that that's what I wanted to do, and that's
Did your
what I did.
dad? Did your dad encourage you when he realized that that's what you wanted to do? That
Well, I don't think there was I don't think there was any great motivation on the part of. He didn't say, "Well, I think you should do this. Why don't you do this?" I kind of got through to going to Iowa. I think he wanted me, or my folks wanted me to go to college, and I had been in some speech work at Franklin High School, and Geraldine Green, who was the head of the drama and speech, knew a lady who was running WSUI in Iowa City called Pearl Bennett Broxham, who she called, and since World War II was on, why they needed somebody, especially in the summer, who would work for free to do menial tasks around the radio station, and that's what I did. And my folks supported me in that. They were there to transport when they could, and were there to help me that way. Mm-hmm. I think they thought I was nuts to do it, but they supported, and but they weren't. They didn't say, "Well, if you just do this, you're going to be on Broadway," or "You do this, you're." They just were there and helped me along, and but I would think that they never thought it was something that could last a career.
Mm-hmm. Did you major in journalism?
Yes. Yeah.
So, when did you broadcast your first? Did you ever do any play-by-play in high school?
In my mind, yeah, I did in my. And then I started to work at WSUI
as an intern.
When I was. It would have been job shadowing in today's time, but I was just a gopher, and I did anything they wanted to do and was there.
So when did you broadcast your first football game
Well, it would have been about 1944, 43, 44. First game I ever did on my own, I had worked at WMT with a fellow by the name of Pat Patterson, who was doing Iowa games, or got to do Iowa games, and he was a highly regarded newsman, and he decided that he would attempt Iowa football, and so his father was a judge in Cedar Rapids, and I knew the family a bit, and I hooked on as his spotter and gopher, and we got to our first game. It was Iowa and Indiana in Bloomington, and just before we went on the air, he said, he said, I want to tell you, he said, I've never done a game before. And I said, well, Pat, I'll tell you something. I've never spotted a game before. So, and he stood during the whole game, and he was nervous, of course, about it, and we were both sweating because we obviously didn't know what we were doing, and he kept rubbing my head. That's why I'm bald, I think, is that he kept rubbing my head all the time. But then in '44, the first game I ever did on my own was a high school game between City High and Marshalltown, because the Marshalltown sportsman had been taken ill and couldn't do the game, and they had called WSU High for a recommendation, and I was the only guy hanging around. And
What station was that in Marshalltown?
KFAB in Marshalltown. The guy, general manager, called me up, and he said, have you ever done a game? And I said, oh, sure, I've done. Well, what do you need done? And he said, well, it's Marshalltown and City High, Iowa City, City High. And I said, well, I'll do it. And he said, well, how much do you want? And I said, $25. And he said, we pay $15. I said, I'll take it.
So what year
and I was just doing the first game by myself. It was brutal, just brutal.
What year did you graduate then?
From high school or
No, college.
Oh, college? In 48.
48. And then where was your first official job?
Well, it was at KCRG, KCRG Radio, and started in August of 48.
Was that a news station at that time, or a fairly new
Yes.
station? Mm-hmm. And you were hired on to do what?
Sports. They were going to start a sports program.
The sports department was going to be your responsibility?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And who hired you at that time?
Well, the Gazette Company hired me.
No, I meant the gentleman that interviewed you.
Gosh, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I can tell you why I got the job. I think going back to my father, because the owner of King's Concrete was a gentleman by the name of Bill Crawford, and he was also on the board of the Gazette. And my dad called, and he saw Bill all the time. They worked together because he was an officer in the company, and I think he said, hey, my son's out of school and he needs a job, and I was happy to get it.
Mm-hmm. And they left it up to you as to how you would run the sports department?
Well, not really. I tried to, over a period of time, I think they'd say I tried to put my will on their operation.
Well, did they just have sports scores, or did they do play-by-play games?
We started to do play-by-play games. The first game I ever did for KCRG had Bill Quimby in it, and it was a Cedar Rapids. The Cedar Rapids Legion team played at the ballpark in Des Moines, which has become Sec Taylor Stadium, in August for the state Legion championship. It was Legion ball, and Bill was the catcher on that team. And the first game that I ever did was that game in Des Moines with the Cedar Rapids Legion team.
So how many hours could you expect to work in a day's time? And
Oh, I didn't care.
did you have a morning program, evening or afternoon program?
Oh, we started out, as I remember it, with 15-minute radio sports shows that would have been at 6:15 and 10:15, because radio at that time, it was only radio, it wasn't television, and radio ran the same sort of news segment that television was to later on adopt.
How did you compile all this information? Where did it come from?
Well, it came through the Associated Press wire off a ticker,
And did a lot of the high schools
and a
call
lot
in?
of it had to do with what you could scrape up, and calling. And
Would the different high schools call in to give you scores of the teams?
Yes. I was never very good at that, but yes, we tried to do that.
Didn't you travel with the Cedar Rapids baseball team for a while?
Well, we started in 1949 with doing the Cedar Rapids Rockets, and they had started the season as an independent team because of a lot of things that went on. And maybe that might be of little interest here, that during the winter of 48-49, Veterans Memorial Stadium, the first Veterans Memorial Stadium, since Hill Park had been torn down, was going to be opened in 49. Well, the object was Pat Harmon, who was the sports editor of the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and I had lobbied the Western League, which had 6 teams in it and was a Class A league in those days. We lobbied them to get a franchise for Cedar Rapids. The franchise at a meeting in Minneapolis was supposed to be and was awarded to Cedar Rapids in January of 49. Well, Cedar Rapids became the 7th team. Now, Cedar Rapids would have been in a league with Des Moines and Sioux City and Omaha and Denver, towns of that sort in a high class, Class A baseball. Well, a few weeks went along, and the Western League did not get an 8th team to complete the league. So they met and decided that they would not have an unbalanced schedule with 7 teams, and Cedar Rapids was thrown out. Well, then we had to scramble around. Adam Pratt, who had owned the Sioux City Ball Club, who had become a self-made, successful businessman and had a great interest in baseball, had the team in Sioux City. So he allowed us out and had the resources to open an independent team in Cedar Rapids. But we were going to have to operate independently in a Class C League, which was then the Midwest League. We were going to have to operate in that area. And we got together a bunch of scruffy ball players and started the year. They had, I'm sure, that they had spring training at, and you probably won't believe this, but they had spring training at Daniels Park. That wasn't even on, you couldn't even say you went south for spring training because it still was on the north side of First Avenue. But that, and it was kind of a mess, to say the least. And the season started, and the team, of course, made a lot of changes as the season went on. But all of a sudden, operating independently, and through Jim Meehan, the general manager, who was Adam Pratt's hiree, he had enough baseball contacts through a pheasant festival that he had run in South Dakota that attracted ball players. He had enough, and he knew players around, and we ran them in and out, and finally, by about mid-season, the team got to be doggone good and started to win. Had a home run hitter in Jack Tanner, and had a fiery manager in Packy Rogers, and they had had some success. And then the KCRG, myself, we got it together and decided that for the rest of the year we would do the broadcast. We'd started out with the opening game, but then we're doing road games. But by mid-season, it was time to go on the road and to do that. And the team had a wonderful mode of transportation. They had a school bus driven by the catcher, whose name was Marquardt. Del Marquardt was the catcher, and he was paid $5 extra a week to drive the bus. And
you had mentioned the fact that when you're doing play-by-play descriptions, you had to reenact the games.
Well, I was later on with, as we went along, I went out, did road games for about 12 years. And some of those would be what they called Western Union reports, where I'd be sitting in a room just like this, and to my left there'd be a ticker going, and it'd be much like a stock ticker, same thing. And on the ticker line would be Jones, right field. Then it'd go tick, 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 and then it'd say S1, strike one. Then it'd go tick, 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 tick. Then it'd say hit, right field, single. And that's all you'd get. So you would have to develop that Jones steps into the batter's box and takes a look, and pitcher gets his sign, wind up, here's the throw, and there's strike one, right over the outside corner. But we had a lot of crazy things that went on doing those games like that.
And probably most of the public that was listening to you probably thought that you were actually there.
Well, if they were just listening casually, they probably didn't know the difference. Some guys in those days who were doing that sort of thing used to, they'd bang a leather chair, and that's the ball hitting the catcher's mitt. I never did that. We did play continuous crowd noise behind the games, but not some guys who ran games like that, when there was a big, they'd pot up the crowd noise higher. never did that. But some funny thing, I'll tell you, the funniest trick that was ever pulled on me in my career happened during a ticker tape game. Because when I got out of school, I didn't have any transportation. And when I started to work for KCRG, why I had to take the bus or trolley or whatever to get to work. And so I wasn't very mobile. But after that first year, and why I had enough to deal on transportation, on a car. So I got a Mercury convertible, and it was, for me, that was some deal, of course. And I got it when the ball club was on the road, and took it down to the station. We had the KCRG was located at First Avenue and First Street West on the second floor, and across the street at First and First West there was a Standard Oil station, and I'd made arrangements with the man there to park the car. And so I did. The game, I suppose, the ticker game, we started the broadcast about 7 o'clock. So at 6:15, I parked the car there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful evening. It was summertime, and so I just left the top down and went up to the studio and started to fill out the scorecard. And, at 7 o'clock, we took the air and started to broadcast the game. Oh, about an hour later, the man running the audio board came in and wrote me a note. And he said, it's clouding up out there. He said, and I'll put the top up on your car. And I went, oh boy, yeah. And so he left. 15, 20 minutes later, he came back in. And he wrote me a note. He said, how do you get the top up on this car? And he had some drips of water on his face. And he said, it's starting to rain. Well, now I'm getting a little, this is a brand new car, first car, pride and joy, all of that. And so I write it out again, and then I reach over and whisper to him off the mic. And that goes on, and he comes back in about 10 minutes. Now he's kind of wet. Water's down on his shoulders. He said, it's starting to rain pretty hard. He said, and I can't get the top up. He said, how do you do? I said, you've got to do this. And so I'm gesturing and doing the game. And, so now my face is starting to get flushed because I'm thinking, how am I going to get this top up on the car? And he comes back about 5 minutes later, and he is soaked, absolutely soaked from top to bottom. And he says, I can't get the top up, and it's raining. It's raining. And so I said on the broadcast, I said, they've had a quick storm come up at Evansville. I said they're suspending the game. And I said something like, and I'm going out to check to see what the weather is. And with that, I left the broadcast, cold day. Went out, ran down the hall, ran down the stairs, rolled out, just roared out into the middle of the street, and it still is as nice and clear a summer evening as you would like to have. I had been had, but
So when did TV come on the scene at KCRG?
1953.
Was this imagine nothing but black and white?
Yes, just barely.
Did they use makeup?
Oh, no. We didn't. That's something I've always kind of reminisced about. That I was a guy who helped sign on Channel 9 here in Cedar Rapids, the first television we had. I was working, our news director was a gentleman by the name of Dick Yoakum, who was an outstanding newsman that I had gone to Iowa with. And he was later on to become a professor of journalism at Indiana and had really a distinguished career. And he and I, he did the news and I did the sports. And we had 15 minutes of news and the weather and 15 minutes or 12 or 14 minutes of sports. Absolutely unheard of today, where they would like to have you cover a game in 40 seconds, and that'd be long. But we had 15 minutes. But they never, when I went to school, Iowa didn't have any television. You had no courses in television or anything to do with it, or in photography, in movies and that sort of thing. It was, you didn't have to have that for radio, And so he and I started out with just about what we have in this room. Bare walls, a table, and a camera.
What'd you use to show on the camera? You didn't have any
Nothing.
film footage, did you?
Nothing. We had zip, no visuals at all. And that was the first show. We had no visuals whatsoever. Well, Dick and I got together and we said, what are we going to do we just can't sit there and read this stuff and so on. We've got to mix it up somehow. And we decided that we'd go down. There was a drugstore right down on the corner, across the street from the Standard Oil station. And we went, so we started to get Time and Life and Look and those magazines of the day that had pictures. And we went back to kindergarten, really, because what we do is try and find a story that matched the picture and cut out the guy's picture and put it on a placard and put it over here so the other camera could focus on the picture when we were talking about the president or Casey Stengel or somebody. And that's we graduated from that to Polaroids. Still Polaroids. I covered the Iowa's first two Rose Bowls visually by sending airmail Polaroid pictures back. This is caveman stuff, and then we graduated from there to black and white film. We finally got a film deal, and we could develop black and white film, but only in the negative. So when they put it in the camera, they had to switch the polarity of the video camera to make it come out in black and white. And then nobody knew anything about film developing, and we'd wind up with green slime on the film and stuff like that. It was a mess. And then we got to positive black and white, and then finally to color.
When did you ever do any play-by-plays of baseball games out to
Yes, we did.
Betts Memorial?
We did the first televised baseball game here in Cedar Rapids.
Do you remember what year?
That would have been in 56, when Cedar Rapids was working with the Milwaukee Braves. And we had a great ball club and had a great season, and to kind of salute the team, we did the last game of the year on television, and we put the cameras on the back of a pickup. Cameras, there were two. We put them on the back of pickup trucks and did the game that way. And then later on, we did the first high school basketball game on television, and we had to take every stitch of equipment out of Channel 9 to the game site, and the news, both the 6 and 10 o'clock news segments, had to run from the high school, and usually the broadcast came from the women's locker room out in the arena.
So where did you meet your wife?
She worked at KCRG.
What
She
was
was doing traffic and logs and that sort of thing.
What was her first name?
Susie
Susie.
German.
Did she have your love of sports?
Well, kind of, I think. And then she, as we got to know each other better, why she became a great help, and we got married. And
What year
she
did-
became just a magnificent helper. I mean, supporter and helper. Kept score, spotted football, did the basketball books, and she became very, very knowledgeable in sports.
What year did you get married?
Now you've got me. That's too long ago to remember.
I didn't mean to embarrass
No,
you.
no, I'm not.
So-
It was, we got married in August, and have been married about 36 years.
So she got to go on a lot of road trips with you then?
Mm-hmm. We went a lot of road trips, tournaments. One of the longest trips we ever made, she and I and her mother, I took them down to El Paso, Texas for an Iowa tournament at what was Texas El Paso then, is UTEP now, but it was a long trip, especially coming home. I remember driving all day, morning till night, and I still wasn't out of the state of Texas.
How many children did you and Susie have?
We had two. We had son Rob and a daughter Jane, who was killed in an automobile accident when she was 19.
Would that have been in Cedar Rapids?
Yes,
She was
she was
killed?
out on Highway 30.
Did Rob show an interest in sports like his dad had?
Well, I think so, yes, because we took him around to, he grew up in the gym and in the stadium and in the press box and in the booth and meeting players, and he was introduced to it as in an early age. Yeah.
Did he ever go into journalism? Like
Oh
you?
yes,
He did?
yes, yeah. He, yes, done extremely well in his avocation, which would be sports broadcasting, and doing games, and he's had an excellent career, and will have a even greater career, I think, as time goes on, as long as he keeps to his day job, which has been a pharmaceutical rep for Johnson & Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Did the two of you ever had the opportunity to team up?
Oh, yes, yeah. And one of a great thrill for Susie and I was the fact that he played in the state basketball tournament for Cedar Rapids, Washington, and we got to do that game at the Veterans Auditorium in Des Moines, and the games that led up to the tournament and so on. And
So
that was a thrill too. Yeah.
how long did you stay at KCRG?
I was there 28 years, and then I went over to KHAK. Was there 20 years.
What year would that have been? In the 70s? 70, 77?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And you spent how many years at KHAK?
20.
And
And
then,
I kind of lit out on my own after that.
was that when the station was sold,
You mean
when you left there?
when I left KOC?
Yeah.
Yes, they were. It went into the conglomerate of a bunch of stations nationwide, and they weren't going to do much sports. And I was just phased out.
Was that when you took your retirement?
Yes.
But you continued on after retirement.
Yeah.
You,
Well, yes. I always tell people I walked around, and if somebody wasn't at a microphone and they needed somebody, well, I was there. So I've been back at KCRG, and that has been very nice of them to do with some television spots and talk radio, and I've done some high school with them, and I've done a weekly, for a couple of years, a weekly show that summarizes the Cedar Rapids Kernels week by week, and then at K-Memory, Rick Sellers was kind enough to give me some time for 2 radio shows a day, and I've been with MediaCom doing some television on high school events, and so I've tried to keep active, yes.
do you still do the Iowa games?
No, not anymore, no. But I cover them and do reports and interviews and about everything, but I'm not on the broadcast, no.
Who was it that took over to do the sports? Was that Gary Dolphin?
Yes, Gary Dolphin took, Ron Gonder did for WMT and Jim Zombel for WHO, and we all had our little niche there, and that went on for a number of years, and Iowa decided they would go a different direction, which has been good for them, and but we had Ron and Jim and I had I would think, a very good relationship.
Yeah. So that had been
Good friends, and
kind of upsetting for the three of you after all of those years. How many years are we talking about? 50 years?
well, yeah, for Jim and I, it would have been 55, about 55 years, and Ron a little bit less. But of course, I worked with Tate Cummins over at WMT, and I worked with Tate too when he was sports editor of the Gazette. I probably have known more. There haven't been very many Gazette sports editors, but I think that I've known more than my share in Earl Coughlin, and then Tate, who took over, and then Pat Harmon that I talked about, who hired Gus Schrader, who came on, and then after Gus, Jack Ogden, and Mark Dukes in between.
You must have gotten to meet an awful lot of
Yes,
important sports individuals
Well-
in your years.
both.
Got invited probably to many, many banquets and eye clubs and
Oh, yes, yeah.
asked to speak at them. And
Well, yes, there have been, that's part of it, yeah. I suppose the best entertainment I think I ever had was in it would have been 1959. The Chicago White Sox were in the World Series, and Bill Veeck was the GM of the White Sox. And for the press who covered the World Series that year, he put on the most lavish entertainment that you could ever want. I remember that very, very well.
did you? I imagine you got to go to most of the bowl games, the Iowa Bowl games.
Yes.
Did Susie get to go with you on a lot of
Yes,
these?
she went to the Rose Bowl, and we took one of the most interesting Rose Bowls. I took, Susie and I took Rob and Jane and Susie's mother, Genevieve, out to Pasadena to the Rose Bowl. And the trip was very, very good. And I think we all had a good time, except the night before, the New Year's Eve, before the Rose Parade, it started to rain. And to get to the parade and to get the family to the parade and to the game, you had to get up at 4 in the morning. You had to be on the buses at 5 to go to your seat on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, because they have 1 million people, and you just can't drive over and say I'm at the parade, you know. And so the question was, as the evening went on, well, what if this rain continues? We can't sit out there in that mud all the time and this rain, and then go to the game and you never get dry and this and that. And so we went to bed, and about 2 o'clock, I'd get up and look at still raining. 3 o'clock up, still raining. 4 o'clock, well, it was still raining. Well, I said, so everybody got up. And, are we going, are we not? Well, we decided to get on the bus. I said, well, one thing, we can just stay on the bus if we have to. But an amazing thing, it makes you think of there's somebody taking care of you, because with 1 million people there, about 7:30 or a little before maybe, the rain stopped and the clouds opened up and the sun came out, and it was a beautiful day.
Bob, you served a stint on the board of directors for the Cedar Rapids Baseball Club, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
How many years did you serve in that?
Well, I'm up over 45, but my dad was on the board, and my son is on the board. So my dad's service, my service, and my son's service would total well over 75 years of the 100 years that Cedar Rapids has had baseball. So
You were
I think we're kind of proud of that.
I certainly think so. And you were elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame this year.
Well, the
Cedar
football.
Rapids.
Oh, well, yes,
Cedar
both.
Rapids.
Yes, yes, yes. I that's it. I was on the committee, and at the end of we have an annual meeting where we go through trying to get together and compile a history of Cedar Rapids baseball and bring those names of the people that were significant to the fans of Cedar Rapids so that they would have, much like the History Center, a repository of some of the things that went on in the past. And the committee said, well, you're in too. I said, in what? And they said, well, we're taking you. And I said, I didn't vote. But anyway, they did, and I was very, very appreciative. And Rob made the presentation, which made it even more special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine you were very proud of the new stadium when it finally came about.
Yes, absolutely. It has taken a lot of time and took a lot of effort, and it's an ongoing project, of course. But I think at some time if somebody ever looks at this thing, they'll think that a good job was done there. I hope.
You were awarded the Chris Schenkel
Yes.
Award this year?
Yes, I was at the College Football Hall of Fame in South Bend.
In appreciation for what?
Long service to college football.
Like, how many years are you talking about?
60.
60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of a prestigious award as
Yes.
far as broadcasting?
Well, yes, it is. Your name is, and recognition is in the Football Hall of Fame. That is a wonderful exhibit in South Bend, and it was a very high honor. Susie and Rob were both there, and so was Phil Hattie, the Iowa Sports Information Director, who is a Cedar Rapidian himself, and Steve Rowe, who is his assistant. Both of them made extra special effort to be there, so it was wonderful, wonderful.
So what are you doing at the present time?
Well, at the present time, I'm still standing. And
Are you still working at
yes,
a station?
I'm doing K-Memory, 2 sports shows a day, 2 talk shows at KCRG radio, television spot at KCRG, and little high school football.
Do you have any intentions of hanging it up as long as you have your health?
Only when they tell me to hang it, then I'll hang it. That's it.
If you had your life to live over again, Bob, would you have done anything different, or wished you'd have done some things you never got a chance to do?
Oh, I suppose you always can look back and say, well, I should have, would have, could have, but you didn't, so you can't be sorry about it. No, I certainly wouldn't have chosen, I don't think, any other line of work. I probably could have done some things that there are regrets you have, of course, because everybody would, I would think, and a lot of great things have happened to me, and it's been a great ride, and you can't look back. Somebody might be following you. That's the problem.
Bob, unless you have any other memories to share with us, the Cedar Rapids History Center, the Linn County Historical Society would like to thank you very much for sharing your memories with us.
Well, thank you. I hope that sometime, in some place, some person, somewhere, gets a kick out of this. Thank you.